Hello, my lovelies. Okay, so we've discussed POV. If you want a writing assignment or a little homework to get better at practicing your POV, I want you to consider an opening sequence. Just pick something simple, like the character that you want to write about. Just pick a character. Could be your own. Could be something you're making up right now, whatever, and have a sequence of short events like they arrive somewhere, they walk into a room and see a cup on the table, okay, or they walk into the scene and they greet somebody they know. Very short sequence. It should probably only be a couple of paragraphs long at most. All right, so pick that, figure out what your sequence of events are, and then write it 3 times. Once in a first person point of view, once in a third person point of view, and once in a person point of view. Okay, so first person point of view, uh, uh, James arrived. Uh, I arrived at my home. I saw a cup of coffee sitting on the table, and Susan was there to greet me. Okay, first person point of view. That's past tense. You can do it past or present. Third person point of view. James walked into the house. The smell of coffee hit him. He looked from the cup sitting at the table, and Susan said hello. Okay, third person point of view. Uh, Second person point of view. This one's tricky because most people don't even know the person point of view. That's you walk in to the smell of coffee and see a coffee cup on the table. A woman you know as Susan smiles and says hello. That's second person point of view. You only ever really see second person point of view in like choose your own adventure stories. I've seen it in some video games, um, and most of the time I've ever used it or ever seen it used is in tabletop RPGs. Um, so that's when it gets used the most, I think, for me, is in when we're playing role playing games. Like the DM uses it. Um, and like when you're telling a story to somebody and trying to bring them into it, like imagine you walk in and you see, like, so that would be how second person point of view would get used. um and you write that out and you see which one's more comfortable with you, and play with and play when you do this assignment, play with the descriptions of the room. um the smell of the coffee, the sound of the door, the expression on Susan's face, but just limit it to the very small scene and practice your descriptions to see which one gives you the response you're looking for, gives you the world that you're looking for, right? Is it easier or harder? And like pay attention for yourself to help improve your writing. How much are you able to describe? How vivid does each one feel? How it lived in, how close to, how is being further away from the story okay if it gives a better emotional response? Because part of the reason you want to tell a story is to get an emotional response from the reader, right? To make them feel something, to make them feel like they're there. If they're happy or sad or scared, can you make the opening seem melancholy? Can you make it seem exciting based on those descriptions, right? And your POV helps you determine what descriptions you're able to give the reader. Hence, your POV is very important. Um, and so that sort of segues into my next topic I want to talk about for the writing craft is your character. You can really sort of play with genres and settings. You can have a romantic comedy in a gritty world with, monsters. You can have a cozy mystery set on a space station. You can have a traditional western cowboy adventure in space. You can you can play with genre and settings. You can mix and mash. You can So that part's really very malleable when it comes to writing. There's not a lot of set rules on your genres and your settings. One of the only rules that are for certain is if you want to write a romance story, it needs to have a happily ever after or happy for now. Romance genre has a very specific. It needs to have a happy ending. That is one of the hard. That's like one of those set in stone kind of rules. Cozy mysteries. One of their rules is it's supposed to um the stakes aren't supposed to be as high as like regular murder mystery. Noir is supposed to have this dark, pessimistic undertone. Like these are the things that make up that genre, and you need to have those. But you can have those and subvert them with other tropes. So like you can have a gritty thriller plot line, but have it be a romantic comedy. So it would not be listed under the noir, it'd be listed under romantic comedy, but it would be weirdly dark and gritty and funny. So, like, you can play around, but know what you're working with. Um, but when it comes to, but all of that depends on whether or not the reader is going to care about your character. You can get away with all these other things if your character is loved. If you can write a character that makes somebody love them, feel for them, want to know what they're doing, you can get away with a lot of BS on all the other parts of your story if you can make them care what happens to this character. I am really happy to see that there's a lot more character driven stories nowadays than there used to be. Uh, um, it used to be very plot driven. Uh, and like plots are great. I love a good plot. I love a good twisty, turny, surprise endings, that sort of thing. But it's hard for me to make it through an entire book, even if the story itself is interesting, if I don't like the characters. If I don't have any character to hold on to, I won't care how it turns out. And that's actually what happened to me with a certain GOT game of, you know, chairs. Anyway, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name of the books without permission or whatever. But I kept falling in love with characters, and he kept Xing them and getting them out of the stories. And I'm like, all my favorite characters have been like, I have two characters I still care about, and I'm sure you know it because they're the ones that are under this high. But that's it. And it was so difficult to get through it because there was so much of this book that wasn't about them because the characters I cared about kept getting iced. And I'm like, I don't want to keep reading. I'll just look up the cliff notes and find out what happened to my favorite character. And because also, like, I have other problems with the books, but like the story was interesting. The story was great. The plot was fantastic, but like you keep killing off my favorite characters. Like, I'm not saying you can't kill off characters, but you should make sure your characters are lovable. You should make sure your characters have something about them that is compelling, even if you love to hate that character. Um, they should be compelling. They should invoke an emotional response, right? So characters need to be fleshed out, good, bad, otherwise. They all need to have who they are and what makes them breathe in the page. So I find it really easy. No, that's wrong. Not easy. I find it better and easier for me to start with, okay, I feel like writing um, a fantasy story. Let's go with that. I feel like writing a fantasy story. In all of the fantasy medias that I have watched in my 40 some odd years of being on this earth, what are my favorite characters? I, I love the strong, you got your himbos, you're strong, do goody. I'm gonna save the day guys. You've got your slender rogues with their witty banter and their quick wits because they're not as big as the big tank guy. You've got your intelligent but aloof wizards, and you've got your aggressive meat shieldy barbarian characters. You got your staples to pick from. Yeah, not you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? But you don't want it to be cookie cutter. So, for instance, um, let's do the big Conan barbarian, not too bright, not dumb, but clever, cunning, not necessarily book smart barbarian, right? Let's go with the barbarian. But we don't want him to be a cookie cutter of other barbarians. We don't want him to be Conan. We don't want him to be somebody else's barbarian. So we're going to change some things about this the archetype. We're going to change some things and start making it more personal. So, I think I don't want it to be a man. I think I'm going to make my big, strong, muscly barbarian a woman to start with. I think we're going to go with cunning, but we're also going to go because a lot of like the Conan character comes off as very like doesn't necessarily care about anybody. He's very aggressive. Uh, most barbarian characters seem very rage. I'm gonna beat everything. We're gonna go with a more mama bear kind of situation. So we're gonna go big. We're gonna go strong. We're gonna go cunning as opposed to book smart, and we're going to go with protective instead of aggressive. We're gonna go with protective. We're gonna go with someone who's big, who's scary, who's strong, doesn't necessarily feel the need to like beat up everything in the room, but will absolutely throw down at a drop of a hat. And you don't want to be that hat. Just say it. So I think that's what we're gonna do. And now that I have the start of my idea, I'm gonna write that down. We're gonna go big bear mama. I don't have a name for her yet, so we're just gonna give her that little acronym. We're gonna have her be um a lot of the times the barbarians use things like axes or swords. I could go with a club. I could go with a hammer. Um, I haven't decided. I'm leaning towards like two axes, like two hatchets. That way she can be a little faster and it's less clunky speed. That might be a good option. Besides, hatchets also have like dual purpose. It's not just like swords aren't great for chopping wood, right? They're not great for survival. And I want this to seem more realistic, like she doesn't live out in the woods by herself, kind of thing. So I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with two hatchets. Okay. Um, now, uh, like I like the idea of like a lot of times the barbarian has lost everyone and their tribe is gone or whatever, and like they have this tragic backstory, which is why they're alone. I like the idea of instead of having that this tragic backstory, that she's not like alone because everyone's gone. Let's do something different. Let's do she's out because she's on a quest. Maybe she has to go find, maybe there's not enough men in the village. It's a tribe. Maybe she needs to go to another village, find another husband. Maybe she doesn't like the pickings and she just like, I'm going to go, maybe she's young. It's like, I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to go have an adventure. I've been in this tribe a long time. I want to go see what else is out there in the world. Maybe she's curious. Why can't she be curious? Even if she's a barbarian, maybe she wants to know what it's like for other people, right? So we're not going to do a tragic backstory. We're going to do out for adventure, right? I think that gives her a very different flavor than a lot of the other barbarians I've ever seen in movies and medias. I'm liking where this is going. So she's not as angry. Maybe she's a little more friendly and curious about things. She tries to be helpful, because she lives in a tribe, right? She lives in this clan. They're out there in the wilderness. They're barbarians. They help each other. They work together to for their community. Why would she be mean to people? Why would that be her natural response to things? You would be helpful, right? I don't see why she wouldn't. So we're gonna have her be helpful. Maybe even maybe even cheerful. I think I like that idea. I think I like the idea of the big, strong, axe wielding barbarian being a cheerful little ray of sunshine who's out there on her adventure to go see what else is out there in the world before she brings some of these tales home to her family. I like this idea. I like where this is going. I like where this is going. And in real time we have made this character who's like I'm like yeah, yeah, she I like her. She's going to be like, "Huh, you have fallen. Let me help you up. Where are you going? Okay. Have a nice day," kind of thing. Very big, very loud, very friendly. Just out there trying to see what's out there in the world. And when she needs to throw down, she absolutely can. I like this. All right. Now, we can't just have a story with just one person. It's not as exciting, right? So we should make a couple of others. I kind of have this idea. In a lot of the times when you have a big, strong, muscly character, right? you It's common and almost expected that they would have a counterpart, someone small, someone delicate, someone a little fragile in comparison. Like the bigger they are, the smaller and more delicate the other character is, right? So usually you have this big barbarian man and some delicate little princess, and I kind of like this stereotype, right? I like the big barbarian and the delicate princess trope. So since we've subverted with the barbarian, let's subvert with the princess and make him a delicate little flower. Maybe an intellectual mage. Okay. Very delicate, likes all the pretty clothes, very, very pretty. Spends a lot of time on his hair and face. And we could have it include the trope where, like, she's often mistaken for a man and he's often mistaken for a woman, and then we can have like a weird little gender play back and forth, which is very exciting. And I like this duo, and we can give him some personality. Maybe he's a grump, she's the sunshine. We can do that with the sunshine grumpy trope, and she's the sunshine and he's the grump, and he's like this little sort of very pretty but aloof, doesn't like people, doesn't really want to touch things. You know what I mean? Like he's sort of forced out into the world and maybe. Oh, okay, okay. He doesn't want to be out in the world. She does. He's forced to do something because he got sent on a mission. Maybe he's like a scholarly mage, and they sent him out on to do something, and something happens, and she comes to his rescue. I like this idea. I like this idea. This sounds fun. Does it sound super serious? No. But what do you want from 10 minutes, right? But it's cute, right? You get this little subverted trope of this big barbarian and the mage princess, and you get to play with it. And they seem you would give him some more quirks, give him a little more. Maybe he has the tragic backstory, because he's the grump. Who knows? You could have it be all kinds of things. Maybe you don't want the romance aspect of a man and woman. You could be another late, but you see where I'm going with, like, how you sort of build, and you start with this this little, oh, I kind of like this trope. Let's play with that a little bit, and you can build from there if you want it. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. That's a lot of things. People try too hard to be completely original in everything they do. And the problem with being completely original every time is that, one, it never actually works. Somebody has thought of this at some point or another. Two, if it's too far out there because it's so original, it's going to be really hard for people to connect to it and to feel the emotional connection, to understand what your vision is, right? You want it to have enough familiarity that people know what you're trying to get at. They can kind of understand what you're saying. They can imagine it in their minds. that they feel some connection to the character that they're reading about, right? So, like, let's talk about characters that you shouldn't necessarily root for, but you do. For instance, John Wick's a really great character. He is this hardened, terrible, scary, frightening killer, right? He should not be the person you're rooting for, but you will. And you do because they spend the first 10 minutes of his introduction showing you his vulnerability, showing you his pain, showing you his sadness, showing you his grief, something almost all of us can connect to in some way. The loss of of this woman that he loved, his obvious trying to figure out how to cope with that, his uh his bonding with this puppy at the beginning, like this this shows you underneath all of what they're about to, because you don't know that he's this killer until after, but like they're showing you who he is at his core, and you can resonate with that. You can understand it. You can understand his rage and his grief and his outrage at what happens. And so as these other layers of uh the Baba Yaga, of Wick, get revealed, you still root for him because you know all that other stuff underneath. And if like you started in the middle in the action, you wouldn't have that resonance. The movie would be faster, but and the action would be like heart pounding, but you wouldn't have the emotional registry that comes with knowing what happened to him and why it's important. And having the dog be there, these are all things that no matter who we are, we can all register to. um, because who doesn't love a puppy? And so it's one of those things where, like, this helps connect the audience to the character. You find things that make them connect more. That's why, like, you'll see a lot of these, like, fantasy shows or whatever. You'll have an older man who, like, adopts a kid or is taking care of a kid for a couple of episodes or something. This helps them connect emotionally to the character so that you get to see underneath and realize that even if they seem hard or grumpy or terrible, there's something for you to connect to. um there's ways to do this with villains, and characters are so important to the story. I know my video is running long here, so we're going to wrap up, but that's just like the beginning process of how to first make your outline of your character. Once you have a general idea of what you're trying to write about, who do you want to write about? Once you have your general idea of who you want to write about, then you want to sit down and you want to write out who they are. And what I mean is, like, make like a bio card. You write out like their name, their what they look like to you, uh special things about them, like, do they have a favorite food? Do they have a favorite kind of music? Do they have a favorite hobby? Do they have any weird quirks? Do they have anything about them that makes them unlikable? Or do they have things about them that make them more likable? You want to give your character on this sheet as much detail as you can think of. Any weird things about them, and most of that will never be in the story itself. This is so that you know as much about this person as you can. The more you know about them, the more you can describe in the story, the more they become alive to the reader. And even if you're doing a first person point of view from our barbarian lady, knowing that how she likes, I don't know, a certain type of food, or that she has a more upbeat personality, or she's out here for adventure, not because something tragic happened. These will change how she sees the world, which will in turn change the tone of the story. So you have to know about those sort of things so that you can continue to have consistency in your story. Yeah, so that's a little bit on world. That's a little bit on your character starting. Um, and I think we should try to do that exercise. I'm going to try to do the exercise so that I can in the next video show you how I did it. And what I'll write is an intro in the two of them meeting, and I'll do it from first, second, and I guess maybe I'll do a write up for first, third, and second point of view, and I'll do a little write up for all three, and then we'll go over it, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And if you have any comments or things you'd like me to address, or any ideas you have, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. So feel free. And when I do the little exercise and I come back with it, I hope you will also share yours. And who knows? Anyway, you all have a pleasant evening and take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves and be kind to others. Love you. Bye.